Welcome to Rich Your Soul, Mike Maddock. It's great to have you join us today.
Rocky, it's great to be with you.
And I am excited for the conversation. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
So I grew up we moved 9 times before I was in fourth grade. I'm a Navy brat. My dad was in the Navy and he was being promoted in Keebler, middle class family. My mom didn't work. She stayed home with the kids. And I learned pretty quickly that if I wanted freedom, I needed a couple pennies in my pocket. So early days, I started cutting lawns. I did the snow shoveling in Chicagoland. One of my big victories was that I figured out that I could pitch and win engagements so I could get the driveway and then I could get my friends to do the work and get a piece of every driveway. So that was my first sales lesson.
How did you figure that out?
Well, it wasn't hard for me to go and ask people if I could do work for them. And it seemed like most of my friends were pretty shy about it. And so I think, I'll give some credit to my dad. I sold Boy Scout cookies. And I remember my dad came out with me and he taught me that if I opened the door and smiled at people first, they were more likely to stop and ask what I was selling. So that was my first lesson in sales. And I became very competitive about winning sales at a very young age. Never won the Boy Scout cookie thing, came in second once. But anyway, I didn't mind pitching the business and it was fun for me. It always has been. So doing the work was like secondary. Getting the work for me was the thrill.
And you figured out that you could take margin on them
That's
doing
right.
all the work.
That's
You didn't
exactly
have to
right.
share equally.
No, there was a negotiation it depended on how cold it was actually.
So how
Oh, and
much they wanted to work.
then my dad, God bless him, he ran a factory and he brought a snowblower home one day for the weekend that the factory owned. And my goodness, technology. It's like having a nail gun if you're a roofer. Things just go way faster. So we could just crank out those driveways. So that was a good lesson as well.
Yeah, it's a lot different shoveling by hand in Chicago, huh?
It is. Yeah, it is. Horsepower matters.
So what happened from there? I mean, you started to make money and you got a little bit of freedom, and then what?
Well, so I went to Homewood Flossmoor High School, which was a big high school. I think there were 2,600 kids. I was pretty small. So they had a great intramural. I was too small to really play football, which is what I wanted to play. So I just started working. At 14, I had my first job. At 14 and a half, I had my second job. Serendipitously, every job I had was for an entrepreneur. So I got a chance to see what went on behind the curtain, how it wasn't easy. It wasn't pretty. There were tears. There was yelling. There was the wringing of hands. And these people weren't perfect. None of them were. They just kept at it. They were trying to provide a service or a product that they thought the world needed. And it was a great lesson for me. I mean, just totally serendipitous. And then when I got out of college, after working for Doug Harms in Ames, Iowa, an amazing entrepreneur, God rest his soul, I took the first job I could out of school. And it turned out that guy wasn't all that nice. And I remember thinking to myself, this guy's a jerk. And if he can do it, I can do it. And I hung a shingle. I was 23.
What was that first business?
It was a branding, marketing, advertising company. The tagline should have been, sure, we can do that too. Because I would just literally try to get anything, any project, whether I had a right to do it or not. And, the logo or brochure, eventually website, eventually ads. And that business started in 1991 and grew to about 25 million top watermark.
So you got, let's say somebody wanted a logo. I'm guessing you found somebody to create the logo.
Yeah, I had a partner, Wes Douglas. The company was called Maddock Douglas. Wes was my boss at the first job. After I quit, I hung a shingle and tried to convince him to come along with me. And about 6 months later, he did. Wes is an incredible technician. I was pretty good writer, pretty good concept guy. I'm a kind of a creative director type, account manager. I like to sell and make people believe ideas were automagical. Wes is a great technician, a very good technical designer. So eventually it worked out. I go hunting, kill something, drag it back to camp, and we would both cut it up for, that was the recipe. And that led to the first employee, the second, third, and so on.
So with all these early skills of learning to make money, did you ever learn to save money during that period, or were you enjoying it while it came in?
No, I have, it's like the old Doritos commercial, got to make donuts, got to make more donuts, got to make the donuts. I think my gift has always been, I've been able to produce money, and I've always been able to outrun my own expenses. Um, Here's a pretty cool story, Rocky. Inc. magazine, see if I get this right, called me one day and they wanted to interview me about entrepreneurs and their money. Interviewed, and then they called back and they said, "Hey, we need a picture of you because we are going to do illustrations of people." And my point of view was that entrepreneurs are lousy with money because they take all their money and they keep dumping it back into their businesses. That was my point of view at the time. Turns out to be absolutely true in my case. Anyway, at the time, my late wife and I were trying to adopt a child, and we were going through an open adoption agency called The Cradle in Chicago. And we met this young woman named Alicia, and we'd been meeting with her and going back and forth, and she was pregnant. She was young, at 17 at the time. And we had this meeting with Alicia, with our counselor, and she said, "Listen, I need to warn you about something. Moms often have a change of heart." And what does that mean? Well, when they have the baby, they change their mind. Like, so you need to prepare yourself for that. So meanwhile, Inc. Magazine is online too. And the person I'm working with is Alicia, the editor at Inc. Magazine. She calls and she says, "Hey, we need to set up the photo shoot." And I said, "The photo shoot for what?" And she goes, "You didn't hear? You're going to be on the cover of Inc. Magazine, and we need to take your picture." I'm like, "What?" So I didn't tell anybody but my mom. I went downtown Chicago. He took a picture of me, this guy who photographs Rolling Stone magazine. So it's Springsteen and Fleetwood Mac and me. Anyway, fast forward about a week later, after I take this picture, I get an email from Alicia, and the headline was "Change of Heart." And my heart dropped. I had this pit in my stomach, and I clicked on it, and it was from the editor of Inc. Magazine saying, "Hey, the economy just crashed. Our editor has had a change of heart. I'm so sorry. You're not going to be on the cover of Inc. Magazine." And I had never been happier in my life. By the way, Alicia wound up giving birth to Cody, and he will be 23 years old next Wednesday.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's a wonderful story. Throughout this whole conversation, you never said anything about school. Did school teach you anything about money?
School taught me about beer, pizza, and girls. I worked at school. I had jobs all through school. And then went back to Northwestern and studied business. And that taught me about what I didn't know about money. So I know a thing or two about money, mostly how to make it. I'm not much of a saver.
It's okay. Everyone has their own particular way of doing things. As long as it works for you, it's all good. We'll circle back to this at the end because you've got a buddy who talks about money as well.
See
We'll
his book
see how that
behind you.
goes. So you start out in business and then you actually found a group of people to kind of help propel you, right? An event gathering of Titans at MIT. And it sounds like there were a lot of interesting people there who have all gone on to do some pretty interesting things with their lives.
Yeah, I was very involved with Entrepreneurs Organization. I was in the board in Chicago. I joined a forum. Vern Harnish, who's the founder of EO, started a group at MIT called Birthing of Giants. And Birthing of Giants was sponsored by Inc. Magazine, MIT, and EO. I applied, got in, and for 23 years, we've been getting together. By the way, Birthing of Giants became Gathering of Titans. After 3 years, our class said, "Vern, we want to keep going." He said, "That's too bad. It's 3 years." We gave him a Rolex, inscribed from our class, collected credit cards, nominated a chairperson. And that was 23 years ago. And you mentioned, for example, Mike Michalowicz, the book behind you, Profit First, sat right next to me 23 years ago. And he was the best man in our wedding a few months ago. Brian Scudamore, 1-800-GOT-JUNK, is a classmate. Mark Tarbell, who's an Iron Chef, is a classmate. Brad Feld, who's an incredible venture capitalist now, was a classmate. Great group of people. And we got a chance to see bankruptcies, dreams crushed, bar mitzvahs, christenings, suicides. We kind of grew up together. It's been an honor, and I've learned a lot from those people along.
It's funny when you look at successful people sometimes, you notice certain groups. And what I mean by that is if you look at Silicon Valley, you see a group of people doing certain things. Even in the art world, you might see certain areas where all of these musicians came together at a certain time and kind of was great. And it's funny because a few years ago, I noticed, why are there all these entrepreneurs who came out of Nashville who are now all in their 50s and 60s? I'm like, that whole group of people were in a particular place. And it seems like certain groups or certain places tend to birth that type of I don't know if it's the activity or it's just the bringing great people together, and it just flourishes. And it's always been interesting to notice that.
Yeah, so we lost Robert Redford yesterday. He started Sundance Film Festival. And, Penny Marshall met Ron Howard, met all these acquaintances, met each other there. And it's, I think when people trust each other and share and are able to be vulnerable and share their mistakes, their lessons with each other, that wisdom propels people much more rapidly. Show me your friends, I'll show you your future. John Wooden said that. I totally believe that. It's not what you do, it's who you do it with. And, there's a couple things that happen when people get together and they're successful. One is luck. Don't believe it if a successful person says luck wasn't involved, because it always is. And then it's the people that were there to help them along the way. Nashville, I met with the governor of Nashville at an event. And he said the secret of Nashville is that it's a culture that was born out of music, and musicians collaborate. And they know that the more people involved in a song, the more likely it is to be successful. So the community around Nashville are all collaborating with each other. They will actually reject you if you don't collaborate. And that's what makes Nashville such a great hotspot of entrepreneurship and innovation.
Interesting. I did not know that. And it has definitely taken off over the last, well, it's been a while. It's overnight success 10 years later, I guess.
Exactly. It's a great town.
So we're actually here partially to talk about one of your books. What inspired you to write the book, Plan D, How to Dream, Drive, and Deliver?
So Plan D is about disruptors. People used to ask me, what is a disruptor? And with my tongue firmly in my cheek, I would say people that blow shit up for the good of the whole. A more refined definition of a disruptor, at least in business, disruptors see possibilities where other people see problems. They can come into any room, any relationship, and they see something that someone says, we got a real problem. They say, are you kidding me? This is a possibility. So I started Maddock Douglas in 91 with Wes, and eventually became an innovation consulting firm. So all of our business was around being in rooms where people were being forced by some economic reality to pivot. And they were hiring us to do the research and then come up with a new product, service, business model and launch it. And so we were in rooms with disruptors, and I just started taking notes about what they had in common. And so Plan D basically, and we talked about this before you started rolling the cameras, Rocky, every chapter is about a superhero power that the disruptors that I know have. And so it was fun because I got to write about people. Michalowicz, for example, you've got his book, Profit First, above you. I wrote about him, and it was just a real pleasure to be able to kind of honor my buddies and, the gifts that God gave them that made them great disruptors.
And Profit First came out of essentially Mike's bankruptcy and dark times for him. He had to go through some difficult times, and that got him thinking and saying, wait, why did I screw this up so badly? What's wrong in the way we're presented information? And that's how that kind of came to be.
Yeah, Mike is, I love him. And he's so gifted. I mean, he talks about himself as an author, but he's actually quite an entrepreneur. He can't help himself. He's really good at building businesses, growing them. But his real gift is humility and authenticity. Like, he tells you about the mistakes he's made, and it's kind of gut-wrenching to hear some of the things he's been through, but it's as inspiring as gut-wrenching because he's a great success story. He figured it out. He's built a business, and he's one of the funniest guys I know. So if anybody ever gets a chance to meet him, man, that guy's funny.
I've met him many a times, and that is the one thing he is. He is funny, and he takes the topic of money and makes it approachable and talk aboutable, especially for business owners who, just like people, don't want to talk about money, which is kind of funny to me because I'm like, you're in business. The entire purpose is to make money. How do you not talk about it?
Yeah. And if you want to know how close a group is, like a forum or a peer group, see if they've talked about money together. It's very intimate for people to share what they've got going on financially. And it's a good tell.
Are you familiar with the book Tribe of Millionaires and Go Abundance?
I know GoBundance, but I don't know Tribe of Millionaires.
So Tribe of Millionaires is the book that the people who started GoBundance wrote.
Okay.
That was their original four guys. And one of the things that I've always loved about GoBundance as a group is everyone's got a scorecard. And on your scorecard is your finances.
Yeah.
And they want, you share your finances along with how much you weigh, right? And nothing's sacred. People are going to call you out. Like, what are you doing financially? What are you doing with your health? How are you living your life? It's good to have that kind of space around you. It's funny because you talked about how you came from the sales side, and I spent most of my life in sales. I love problems because if people don't have problems, they're not going to do anything. It's when they have problems that they're willing to change and they're willing to do things differently because they have a problem that they've got motivation to fix. And so to me, sales was always showing people how to solve problems. And if you could show them a good way to do it, you definitely were able to get the sales, so to speak.
Yeah, it's funny. When I was a young father, I refused to let my children say the word problem. I would make them say opportunity. And I remember I trained my dad would always be like, oh, the problem is. And I'm like, Dad. And now even today, he's like, the opportunity at hand is. So I think the ability to see a problem as an opportunity is important. I'm not sure about the accountability thing. So, I think I'm an expert at peer groups, and I feel like the slippery slope of accountability is that it can be too competitive and people get upside down on being authentic and transparent because they don't want to compete. So and I know that some peer groups are, built on the idea of you're going to come in, you're going to show what you got, we're going to keep you accountable. That's fair enough. I think the best practice is asking, do you want to be held accountable for this? And if someone says, yeah, I got to be held accountable. Well, now it's time to go, okay, then we'll bring it up every meeting and let's come up with some metrics and we'll hold you accountable. But I think if people aren't ready to be held accountable, it can shut out the time and, and wisdom it takes for someone to get to the point where they want to be held accountable. Does that make sense? Think of the young entrepreneurs in your life.
It does. I guess my question, though, is if they don't want to be held accountable, what are they doing there? Just learning or just...
So, gosh, that's a good question. Why do people show up in peer groups? For wisdom, to keep from making mistakes that other people have. And the best peer members are willing to share that wisdom. For empathy, to understand that they're not the only ones that are carrying around the weight of, oh my God, I might have to make these decisions that are going to impact lives. For best practices of and most importantly, I think people might not know it, but the best peer groups look at your challenge through a lens that you don't have, so they can make you see your problem differently than you see it. I think that I have quit peer groups because there were too many of the same type of lenses in a group, because it's not constructive. Like if, for example, I parse leaders into 6 different buckets: the operator, the strategist, the rainmaker, the visionary, the futurist, and the orchestrator. Operators are awesome at finding efficiencies. But if you're in a room full of operators and you need to pivot, you're in trouble because you can only squeeze so much water out of a rock, So it's a good question. I think accountability can be a reason you show up, but not the only.
So here's why I asked this. In groups that I'm in, when people show up and give advice and get advice, but don't actually take action, the rest of the group tends to get a little fed up with them.
Yeah. I don't think anybody should give advice in a group. I think that's a trap too. I think that the best practice is to share experience. Here's the reason, Rocky. If I say, hey, dude, you're in trouble. You know what you need to do? You need to go do this. And you do it and it blows up in your face, you're pissed at me. If I tell you you need to go do this and you don't do it and it blows up in your face, I'm pissed at you. But if I say, hey, Rocky, I had that same thing happen to me. Here's what I did. Here's what happened. Here's what I wish I had done differently. So there you go. You can do whatever you want with that. And it's not advice. So I think advice should be outlawed as much as possible in peer groups.
But technically, if you're in a peer group and you've got all these different people, you're going to get 6 different conflicting pieces of advice, right? Or
You're going
not
to get
necessarily.
6 different views of the
Views of it.
challenge.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example just to make this real. So
Yeah.
if I came to a group and said, I'm in so much trouble, we've been in business, and I've said this, we have been in business for 20 years. We have never had a layoff. We have not made money in 2 quarters. We are suffering. I'm running out of cash. I don't know what to do. What should I do? The operator is going to say, let me see your balance sheet and your P&L. I will go through it line by line, and I will show you how I, in the past, have made a company profitable in moments. The strategist might say, how are you measuring? What are you measuring? What are your KPIs? The rainmaker may say, can I see your price? When I've been in that situation, I've met with every one of my best customers. I've looked at something I could close right away. I have done like rainmaker question. The visionary, that's me, is going to say, yeah, we once were in that situation, and I went and acquired a competitor, because they were in trouble too. So I acquired the relationships, I acquired the revenue, and we were able to streamline some talent. The tech futurist might say, we looked at our tech stack and we were able to become much more efficient. We use tools like HubSpot, blah, blah, blah. And then the orchestrator will say something like, yeah, I wonder if when we were in that, we came up with a quarterly theme, a rallying cry for everyone to rally towards. So we were all pulling in the same direction, so that stress turned into something positive. The question is, who's right? The answer is everybody's right at a different moment in time. But unless you have all those perspectives, you might not consider. So that's not necessarily advice. It's just what I did in that situation.
And I guess part of it is the semantics of the words I'm using. And I know I'm usually not very precise. So I guess my comment was more, when you get somebody who comes in and you give that view, and then they come back 30 days later with the same problem, and 30 days later with the same problem, and no progress. That's more, I think, I'm saying. And maybe that's not accountability, and I'm using the wrong term there, but that's where I've noticed groups get a little bit uptight about the progress.
Yeah, so there's a couple things that I see blowing groups up. Number one, victims don't have any place in a group. If you don't have the authority and the ability to make change, in other words, just by example, it's my dad's company and he won't let me do it. You don't belong in that group. You're not a peer. And that makes people crazy, because you're just complaining. And what are we doing here? Like, anything I share with you, you can't do anything with it anyway. It's number one. Number two, there's asymmetrical issues don't work. So if you're running a $50 million company and I'm running a $500,000 company, our challenges are different. So our experiences aren't going to apply. So it doesn't mean one is better than the other. It's tough to share experience that's going to help each other. And lastly, I'll just say this. In design thinking, there's this axiom that if you keep trying to solve the same problem over and over again, but can't solve it, you're probably working on the wrong problem. In my experience, what usually happens is there's a lack of trust and a lack of perspective. So people don't trust each other enough to listen, to fully listen to that experience, and A, and B, there isn't enough, the room hasn't been engineered to have those 6 different perspectives. So it's like you're a hammer looking for a nail, and it's a screw. And nobody can say, I think that might be a screw. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. And I think what the difference is the one word that you used. The groups were engineered. Because I think I find in a lot of places, the groups aren't engineered. They are just put together. And
That's
so
correct.
that's where that issue comes up, in that you don't necessarily have equal people of equal place and needs. And again, I'm not saying that correctly, but what you talked about was different revenue sizes. Maybe it's a beginner or somebody 3 years in business versus somebody 30 years in business. Not to say that you can't learn from those, but there are pluses and minuses to each. Now, the guy 30 years in forgets certain things from the beginning, and yet the guy who's 3 years in needs the wisdom of 30. And so there are parts that go over, but then there are parts that don't connect. But I think I find a lot of groups aren't necessarily engineered or are not properly engineered.
No, I've been in an EO forum for almost 26 years. It's my second one. I just love those guys. They have made my life exponentially better. I've been in a YPO forum for 16 years, same. But, no one decided, oh, these are the perfect 8 people that should be together. It was just like, hey, they're looking for someone. And then what is even more insidious is we tend to recruit people to be in our groups. And we like people that look like us, laugh at our jokes, see the world the same way. The worst, I think, if you're looking for new ideas, are industry groups or there's a very, very dear friend of mine for a short time was running Christian men's business groups. And he said that, in the interview, he said, it just occurred to me that I don't think Jesus would actually be able to be in this group. So if I wrote an article for Inc. magazine that 7 ways to know you're not getting enough everything out of your peer group. One of the ways was if everyone goes to the same bathroom or the same church. The diversity of perspective is really important if you want to see things differently. And if you wind up in a room with middle-aged white guys all in the same industry, the chances that you're going to see things differently are pretty slim, I would say.
Do you find, I've been in tons of room with driven entrepreneurs. They tend not to necessarily tell stories in the way you did. They all tend to give advice. Is that something that has to be taught in the group, or how does that come to be?
Okay, so here's another. I've got like hot takes on everything today. I've had way too much coffee.
That's okay.
I think I just wrote the 10 commandments of a flourishing forum. I should bring it up and read them to you. That would be fun. One of them is that thou shalt not have a moderator or facilitator that has not borne a P&L. So I think that you need a moderator. I think that you need a professional facilitator to herd the cats. And that person's responsibility is to orchestrate the essential conversations, have people present for the good of the whole, keep people on track and keep them from giving advice. Otherwise, it runs the risk of being unruly. None of us like to take orders. None of us are used to having people boss us around. So someone has to be in charge. So that I think that's a rule that I believe. And that person can't be someone that is just trying to line their pockets by putting people in a room. They have to be a fellow P&L owner. They have to have the empathy. They have to have made payroll. They have to understand that the crown you're wearing is heavy. So those ingredients aren't present in most peer groups. Most peer groups are run by the group itself or by someone that was looking, respectfully, has never run their own company and they're just managing a group. And I think that it's fraught with peril.
I don't disagree with you. I think that's just what I see. And so that's kind of what comes across. And I've noticed it in a variety of different groups. And I think that's why some of the groups don't work well, because people were thrown together and half the group is one way and the other half of the group is in a different way. And
and then what
it's oil and
happens?
water.
Tell me what happens, because we're both going to say the same thing. So you're in a group like that. What happens? What happens to the best members of those groups?
They break off and start their own group or do something together. They leave. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're tired of showing up and giving more than they're getting. It's out of balance, and so they go seeking real peers. So groups have to be true peers in order to be good groups, and it's hard. I mean, it's really, really difficult to put together a balanced advisory peer group. But when you have it, oh my gosh, it is a secret weapon.
Oh, I don't disagree with that. I've seen the power of great groups, and I know what they can do. Getting back to the book, there was one thing in there that was interesting. You talk about disruptors, and disruptors are people who kind of change the world or change things around. I, for one, I can't deal with the fact that this is the way we always did it, or like this is just the way it's done, or people who just, the answers just make no common sense. It makes me angry. I'll say it. Okay.
It ticks me off.
It ticks me off. I get very upset and I get frustrated because I get frustrated on multiple levels. Like, I'm like, who hired you? And does the owner know he's losing money? Do you really want me to leave as a customer? But anyway, but you also said in there that all disruptors have a ghost. What did you mean by that?
So Okay, so in my experience, I've never met an successful person that isn't either chasing a ghost or being chased by one. The question is, who's got who? Who's chasing who? What I meant by it is that there's a chip on your shoulder. There's a high school coach, a English teacher that said you'd never make it. Maybe it's one of your parents was like, yeah, that just never, that either pushed you too hard or didn't believe in you. And that is what makes you work harder, makes you work longer, makes you work stronger, etc. And if the most successful people and the happiest entrepreneurs and business people I know are well aware of that chip on their shoulder. And they almost gamify it, like, oh, you never said I'd do this, or look at this, and they're aware of it. It's the people that aren't aware of it and that they're being haunted by this subconscious need to be better, but they're not sure why, that turn into these miserable jerks. And so the whole chapter is about, think about, who is it? What is that chip on your shoulder? Jimmy Kimmel, when he hosted the White House Correspondents' Dinner, when Barack Obama was president, he got up and said, hey, listen, lastly, I just want to say a word to my 7th grade English teacher, Mr. So-and-so, who said I'd never amount to anything. Well, Mr. So-and-so, I'm about to high five the president of the United States. And he turned to Barack Obama and he goes, is it okay? And the president smiled, got up and high fived him. And he goes, suck it, Johnson, or whatever his coach. That's his ghost. Like, he was so aware that this 7th grade English teacher said, dude, shut up. You're never going to amount to anything. It haunted him. It drove him. It became his unfair competitive advantage. So when I meet with leaders, I'm like, hey, man, it's okay. What's your ghost? Just make sure you know what it is and build some KPIs around it. Kick its butt. Just be aware of it. And we could sit here and do a whole show about people, dysfunctional leaders who are very successful if you look at their bank account, but just miserable and just complete jerks because their dad didn't love them enough, their coach didn't believe them enough, and they have no idea.
Well, that was the original, kind of as our tagline to the podcast. You got rich, now what? Because it wasn't the money that was going to solve it.
Wait, do you have to be rich to be on this podcast? I might be on the wrong podcast.
No, you don't have to be. We take people at every part of the way to teach us, their part of the journey. And
Can I give you my definition of wealth?
Sure.
I think this is, so, I've been very, very blessed I've had an amazing life. I had an amazing wife. I have a new amazing wife. I have amazing children, amazing friends, and had amazing businesses. I think wealthy people can do what they want, when they want, with who they want, and they're not distracted by money. And that's the Venn diagram. And that last part is the hardest part, not distracted by money. Because I know plenty of people that have hundreds of millions of dollars in their bank account and they can't stop thinking about it. They're obsessed by it. It runs them. That is not wealthy. That, to me, it's what you want, when you want, with who you want, and you're not distracted by money. If you can get there, and that for you, that might be $1 million, it might be $500,000, it might be 100, whatever it is, if you can get there, congratulations, you're wealthy.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's time freedom.
What you want, when you want.
Yeah. And the other half of it is making sure you're still healthy so that you can enjoy all those things, because if you give up your health for that, you've blown it. And then it's the ability to do all of those different things and have the right, what you've been talking about, not specifically, but mindset and attitudes towards how you live life and so forth. And that's very true. And it's funny that you mentioned, because as I was reading your book, I was also reading Gino's book, Shine. And he also talks about the ghost. And I think, though, for a lot of entrepreneurs, that ghost is what caused them. We've had a lot of people on this show who are successful today who had crappy childhoods. And it was that crappy childhood, more often than not, that was the fire starter for what they became.
Yeah. Is that Gino Wickman's book? I have not read Shine. I'll have to read it. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's the softer side of life, what we're talking about.
I have not read that book.
It goes back to his pain when he was 7.
Okay.
And he's like, every entrepreneur that I've met has some kind of childhood pain that they're dealing with, which is kind of what you're saying in a different way.
Yeah, I think that's right. I will tell you that if you didn't have enough pain, you'll make it up. No, I mean, the ability to think about great athletes They're looking for a reason to be ticked off. Do you know what they said about me? They disrespected me. So I'm going to, like they were looking for a reason. Michael Jordan was famous for that. He's like, did I hear you say that about me? I didn't say that about you. Yeah, you did. And now you're going down. Like he was looking for it. He would find the chip to put on his shoulder. It's useful. I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
My kids are grown, but I wish we had had this talk like 20 years ago, because then I could just constantly look at my kids and go, look, I'm trying to piss you off for a reason. I want something so that you have this in your future, that you can look back at this moment and blame me for it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Someday you will thank me.
Yeah, the funny stuff of that. All right, you have this thing over your head. It says Idea Monkey. And I know the other half of Idea Monkey is ringleaders, which kind of reminds me of Gino and
Visionary
Rocket
integrator.
Fuel.
Yeah.
Visionary integrator. And
I wrote, the story behind Idea Monkey is business partner Raf Vitan came into my office one day and he said, Hey, Idea Monkey, I need an idea. Help me out here. And I was so delighted by the frame, like Idea Monkey, because I was like, what about this? 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 I would drive people crazy because I always had an idea. And it was, I thought it was my superhero power. Turns out, while that might be true, it was also my Achilles heel. We got to a point, and I writing about this in my next book, where we were, we had gone from, Jerry Maguire moment. We're this marketing communications firm. We'd been working on new product development for a bunch of partners. And one day I'm just like, I can't sell. We're more creative. We work harder. We're smarter. We're more clever anymore. I can't do it. We're going to be an innovation consulting firm. We're going to research gaps in the market. We're going to invent new products and services. We're going to launch them and then we'll advertise them. And it'll be easy because people actually want them. And so I came in and gave this big speech to the company, grabbed a fishbowl, like, this is what we're going to be. And about maybe half the company thought it was a good idea. A few people didn't. And the next day we started another company, MacGuffin Creative Group, which I'm very proud of, which is 22 years old now. So that idea, that like moment took us from 3 million to 25 million inside of about 5 years in revenue. And there we were. And then, so we're competing with IDEO. It was awesome. And now we're competing with McKinsey and BCG and all these consulting firms that were using innovation as a Trojan horse to sell technology projects. And there I was in a meeting, trying to figure it out. And my tendency to want to blow everything up and start over had become the tendency of everyone on our leadership team. Turns out we were really good at pivoting and really bad at execution. So we went from 25 million to 18 to 16. And that's when I brought in an outside expert to test my leadership team. And guess what? We were all quick starts. Every single one of us, except for two. My CFO once said, Maddock, you know what your problem is? You're always trying to solve problems that haven't happened yet. I said, thank you, Charles. He goes, it wasn't a compliment. And so that book, Free the Idea Monkey, is about the tension between the operator and the visionary. And it was prescient because it turns out that you don't only need an operator and a visionary, you need 4 other seats as well. And that experience is what led me to start Flourish Advisory Boards, where I literally test and recruit 6 different types of CEOs. So not everybody wants to pivot. Not everybody wants to be more efficient. Everybody has a different way of looking at a challenge. So there's some wisdom for you. Please don't go from 25 million to 16 million to 10 million to learn that lesson. You need 6 different types of leaders on your executive team. And if you send me your Colby score, I'll tell you which ones you're missing.
You mean like this?
That's right. What's your Colby score, Rocky?
I'm 4754.
So I can tell you what you are on the 4754. You're orchestrator strategist on the way we look at different leaders. Orchestrators are the unicorns. Strategists are the KPI people, the metric people. So those are your 2 seats.
I'm a number guy. Yeah. And I'm a systems guy.
There you go.
But I'm also, I call it simple elegance. We build the easiest systems that the monkey could operate.
Maybe I could operate it then.
Well, that's the key. If I can't make a system so simple that a monkey can operate it, then the system's broken. So figure out how to make it simpler and get it done. Yeah, it took me the majority of my life to figure out where I fit because I was always in the wrong seat. And I had no clue. And nor did I have a framework to get to know this. And that's the problem with, I think, being stuck in corporate. They don't look, depending on the company, they don't really look at that, especially in large companies. They stick you wherever they have a hole. And I always felt like I was a square peg trying to fit in a round hole.
Yeah.
But it
Well,
worked out.
quiet desperation, right?
Well, you know what? It gave me everything else I wanted, and I knew that up front. I'm like, oh, okay, they'll give me money and time freedom. I'll take 2 out of 3, and then I'll go find my number 3 of what I really want to do and have fun with life, and I'll do that with the money and the time freedom they give me. So it all worked out.
I think that most people spend their entire life trying to get back to the essence of who they were when they were 5 to 8 years old. And you know how when you hear people have star quality when they walk into a room and like there's something about that person. My experience, and we talked about Mike Michalowicz a little bit. He has that. He is the same person in the boardroom as he is in his kitchen, as he is on stage, and he's never changed. He has not lost the humanity that he had when he was 8 years old. And some people manage to hold on to it. Most of us don't. Most of us learn that we can't dance, we can't sing, we can't, we can't draw. And so we lose that 8-year-old. And then at about 50, we start going, wait a minute, I'm fine. I'm that person. And we slowly come back to that person and we feel comfortable being that person again. And to me, it's a little bit sad. So, my wish is for young people to realize that they're beautiful the way they are and just hold on to it, just like, because people long for it. They see it and they're like, oh my God, there's something about that person. What they see is what they saw in themselves when they were 8 and they miss it and they long for it.
I went through that journey. That was part of it. And that's why for my kids, we never told them what they should be. What we tried to do was give them enough opportunities to figure out where they fit, and then give them opportunities to do their thing in a way that fit for them. And for the most part, it's worked out pretty well for them in that case. And they have to do that. It's funny because there was this quote from Seth Godin. He says, auto companies sell sports cars to 50-year-old guys that they dreamed of. Actually, he said, we sell sports cars to 7-year-old boys that they buy when they're 50.
Yeah.
Because they go back to that core. That's what they're looking for.
It reminds me, I was looking at a Porsche maybe 10 years ago, and my late wife Ruth said, don't you think that would say a little bit too much about you? I'm like, yeah. So I didn't get it. I never wanted to be that guy that drives by. I'm like, man, that car does not suit you.
You know what's funny? I saw a meme the other day, and it's the 50-year-old guy getting out of the sports car, and literally he's on his hands and knees because it's so damn low to the ground.
Yeah. Dang it. I'm glad I was never a car guy, so I have not suffered through that, but I know plenty of people that have.
Yeah, it all works out. One of the other things I kind of wanted to touch base on is decision-making frameworks or frameworks in general. Have you found, you've been parts to lots of different groups and so forth, are there certain frameworks that you have found that are helpful when it comes to all of these decisions? Maybe it's business, maybe it's personal, or...
Yeah, sure. There's a chapter in the book on frameworks that in Plan D that I would encourage people to grab. I'm a big fan of, and I'm writing 2 other books. One book is about making the right decision at the right time and how leaders help people to do it. So off the top of my head, I love the 2x2, high value, low value, high cost, low cost, bottom left, low value, high cost, don't do it, bottom right, high value, high cost. You're looking for top right is like high value, low cost. You want to do that right away. And top left is high cost, high value, and you want to selectively invest. So if you can take all of your challenges with your team and populate that 2x2 and then pick out, choose your battles, just 1 or 2 on the top left and a few on the top right. That's a great framework. There's a whole innovation framework that I won't go into that is very powerful. It's kind of like a portfolio model for where you place your bets on new innovation. And I've written extensively about that. So if you want, just Google Mike Maddock Innovation Portfolio Framework and you'll see that. And then the really tough decisions are, and I'm borrowing this from Jonathan Domsky, who's one of my mentors and coaches, and he's a guru in Flourish Advisory Boards. He encourages people when they're having a really tough time. Usually it's because you have competing values. Like I want to be a good dad, but I want to be generous. And good dad means I won't give my kids this, but being generous means I really want to give my kids this, something like that. And he encourages you to list all your values, take a decision and rate the decision you're thinking about making against your values. And you have to force rank your values. And if you score it that way, you'll have a very difficult value-based decision and a way to make it.
Interesting.
Does that make sense?
It does. There's a lot of frameworks out there, and you got to figure out the ones that work for you. And then a lot of times I tell people, everyone tries to mold themselves to a framework. I go, mold a framework to you. Like, make it work for you. You don't have to be perfect to the framework. Like, that's just not it.
Yeah, I think that, borrowing your words, I think it has to be simple enough so it's easy to understand. That values one is a little bit more complicated. 2x2 is super easy. I do think it's important that everyone on your leadership team understands the framework you're using and if possible uses the same one. Because if you can keep going back to the same framework, you start to train the team to go, okay, here's how we're making decisions about what we're going to do this quarter, next quarter, et cetera.
And that's part of it, right? Training people so that you don't have to keep leading all the time and being the answer man. Can let somebody else have the answers and figure it out. And maybe somebody else will have a different disruption than what you came up with.
Yeah, it's one of the challenges of being an idea monkey. We rescue with ideas. We love having ideas so much that people come to us and say, what do you think we should do? I'm like, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? When the real answer is, what do you think we should do? Here's one of my favorite frameworks. Speaking of frameworks, you've heard of the 1-3-1 framework? So the 1-3-1 framework is, if it's like, Rocky, you come into my office and we have a 1-3-1 culture and you're like, I think we got a problem. I go, okay, Rocky, I want you to 1-3-1 it. Let's have lunch on Tuesday and 1-3-1 it for me. So the standard way of 1-3-1 is 1, here's what I think the issue is. You tell me. 3, here are 3 solutions to the issue, and here's my recommended solution. In Flourish, we make it questions. Here's the question I think we need to answer. Here are the 3 leading questions I would ask to answer that question, and here's the most important question. It goes to the Gestalt thing. Because I think if you get the right question, the answers are easy.
Correct. And that is literally the key, knowing how to ask the right questions for that particular situation. And the other half of that is when you ask questions, people are more apt to be accountable to their own answers than yours.
That's right. Right. So, and I'm going to tell you something that you and your audience probably already know. As we get older, we have less energy, but we know how to ask the right questions. That's it. Like, it's like we expend way less energy because we have all of this experience. We're like, well, here's the question I might be asking myself at this point. And that's not like off the top of your head. This is like well earned. And when you can, that's wisdom. Like, how would you answer this question? One other thing is, in the world of AI, oh my God, if you ask the right question, you can get the answer. Like, what do you want to know? Because in 30 seconds, I can get it to you.
Yeah, I'm starting to hear the flip side of AI. People are stop thinking.
Yeah.
And people aren't discerning the answer. So my AI that I use, just ChatGPT, has a tendency to hallucinate, forget.
Well, who trained it, Rocky?
Well,
this is like a manifestation.
Not even trained. It just makes up stuff. And I'm like, excuse me, go back and reread it. And it goes, oh, you're right.
I know.
You didn't
You're so
say
smart.
That. Sometimes I've had to argue with it. Now so to me, that's akin to the people who follow a GPS and drive off the bridge.
Yeah.
A little common sense.
We have an AI solution for Flourish Advisory Board. It's the Flourish Advisory Brain Trust. And it doesn't give you any answers. It gives you the 3 questions that each one of the seats would be asking themselves if they were faced with the problem you're facing. And so now you consider different questions and go, ooh, I didn't think of that question. That's interesting. Now go off and figure it out.
I was just listening to a podcast from one of my prior guests, and he said, I created an AI. And he goes, the AI won't answer your question the way I would answer your question. What my AI does is ask you questions the way I would ask you questions.
Yeah, similar.
So that you can come up with the right answers yourself and think through it.
Yeah, this AI has a machine learning component. I've applied for all kinds of patents and what's protectable. One of the things that's protectable is that it's asking questions that are informed by the community. And then I have, I mentioned the Colby and predictive index, et cetera, score for each one of the seats. So behind each one of the seats is also like 3 or 4, actually 5 or 6, the greatest thinkers that share that Colby score. So the questions they're asking, it might be Michael Porter, for example, asking the question behind the curtain if they were in that position. So it's fun because I think if you like, oh, there's a question I hadn't thought about before, and it shifts your thinking. No one's giving you advice. No one's telling you what to do. It's just, have you thought about this question? And if you can truly consider it, now you're looking at the problem differently. So it's a different rabbit hole.
You've given me a new idea for my ChatGPT.
Awesome. Well, congratulations. Idea Monkeys Unite. We've done it.
We'll see how that goes. What's one truth about success you wish more people understood?
I think success is 90% what's happening between your ears and 10% what the world can see. If you think that you're doing okay, you probably are.
And that's true. I remember way back when I was working that the speaker came up and I know I'm going to say this and you can yell at me about it. He goes, when you look at problems, 90% is literally showing up. I forget the exact quote, but it's like the problem is 10%. The thinking and the solution is the 90. Because lots of people might have that same thing, and it's all about the way you look at it and you deal with it and so forth. And I've done a horrible job of quoting that.
I think Einstein said, if I had a problem to solve, I'd spend 50 minutes coming up with the questions and 10 minutes coming up with the answer.
Yeah.
And Woody Allen said 80% of life is just showing up. So somewhere in between those two quotes is what you're saying.
It's there. What's a lesson that cost you a lot but was worth every penny?
Oh, gosh, so many lessons, so much money, so much. I think learning that my greatest strength is also my greatest weakness has cost me tens of millions of dollars, but it's been worth it because it's made me a better friend, a better coach, a better leader, better everything. And it's a first world problem. Everything's fine.
That it is. If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Today, I would say just get into the stream and start flowing. I used to think if you choose something you'd love, you'd never work a day in your life. I think that's terrible advice now, and I've given it. I think you don't know what you love. And the only way you're going to find out what's good and bad is to be in the game, get in the current, experience things, jump in. It doesn't matter if this job is great, crap, you're in between, you will learn something. Every step you take is another lesson in what works for you and what doesn't. And the more I know I'm mixing metaphors, the more you're swimming along in the stream, the more quickly you're going to find out what lights you up, what you're good at. You'll meet new people. You got to be in the game. If you wait until you think you know what you want to do, it's too late. Just start doing shit. Start doing shit. The more stuff you do, the quicker you'll become the best version of yourself.
Well, it's true. You can't steer a ship at port.
That's right.
You got to get out in the current and move. Otherwise, it doesn't matter what you do with the wheel.
Yeah. I mean, having jobs since I was 14, I learned so much. I was just trying to make a little bit of money. I had no idea that what I was going to learn from Ron and Irene Dolmeyer at 31 Flavors or Cy Gordon at Gordon's Fine Furniture at 14 and 15. Just listening to him, I picked up so much. And all I was trying to do is have a couple of dollars in my pocket.
Well, I learned a lot with a paper route.
Yeah. You learn.
Quite a bit.
If you're out there, you learn stuff. So get out there. Go do it. Live.
There you go. If people would like to learn more about all your different books and the groups that you run, how do they find out more?
Okay, so Amazon, Mike Maddock, you can find all the books. Mike at mike-maddock.com. You can find me there. That's speaking and writing. And Mike at flourishadvisoryboards.com. If you're interested in learning what your superhero power is, where the gaps are in your executive team, direct message me and I'm happy to talk to you about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Rocky, it's been a blast. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for checking out the full unedited video of the Richer Soul podcast. You can get the full audio podcast with intro, outro, and a ton more details here on YouTube or whatever your favorite podcast player is. Don't forget, we've got hundreds of episodes for you to go back through, and you can also get episode information on the Richer Soul website as well. Don't forget to subscribe so you're automatically updated as to what's going on and every time we release a new episode. The first few episodes of the Richer Soul podcast actually lay out the entire framework that everything is built on over all of these years. So check them out as well. Thanks for listening.